Welcome to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And we are batting 1,000. We're bringing you another trio of great guests. We're going to talk Diddy in just a second, but first off, on a pretty somber note, today is Dan Markel's, what should have been his 52nd birthday. I heard from Phil and Ruth, both struggling a little bit. It is a difficult day. The family did put out a statement, and I put it up on Twitter at Podcast STS. And put it up on Facebook, Surviving the Survivor, Instagram, at Surviving the Survivor as well, the full statement. And it's definitely worth a read. But thank you all for being here today. Things are getting a little wild. We got 3 guests who all happen to be in Florida. Steve Cohen, I was about to call you out. I usually text you to tell you best guests are late, but it was you that was late, so I didn't know who to text. But you were just about 30 seconds late. And Steve Cohen, if you can tilt that computer down, there you go. Everyone wants to see that handsome face. I can't hear you though. Gonna have to unmute yourself. Steve, how's the weather there?
Wait.
Now he's muted. This is good. Tim Jansen, was this a dangerous idea to invite Steve Cohen?
Myself, sorry.
Yeah.
Murder. I'm the Ripper.
Is this his first comedy show?
This is the stand-up comic. Steve Cohen, how was the weather there in the Boynton Beach area? You're a little further north than us. There have been tornadoes spawning up all day.
Honestly, I feel like it's kind of calm, pretty serene thus far. We 1 ounce of prevention, pound of cure. I think a lot of the people here are, boarding up their windows or just putting the shutters down and being cautious, but I don't think we're supposed to get it as badly as everybody else. So, so hopefully it won't be too bad. Our hearts go out for the people in the rest of the country. We reach a lot of people worldwide. As we know, Roger Rhodes, one of our best guests, and Gigi McKelvey of Pretty Lies and Alibis, they lost power. So, to quote Hemingway, ask not who the bell tolls for, it tolls for these. Yeah. Everybody's gonna get it at some point. But how is it?
That was I think that was the last storm, and they're still reeling from that one. Steve Cohen, if you can, just
oh my God, what now?
There you go.
The bombing.
Yeah, there you go. Tim, everything is good. Tim, everything's good up in Tally.
We're good here. We've got a lot of people in town that fled from Central Florida, Tampa area, which we're so happy to have them here.
Yeah. And your daughter lives in Tampa.
She lives on Davis Island, where all the people have been basically doing their shows from, and I'm glad she's here.
And did you tell her get out of Dodge or what?
I did, and it didn't take a lot of convincing, but she's here and we're happy. And we got dear friends in town from Seminole, Florida, the Steele family. We love them too.
And Rob D'Amico, by the way, Rob is founder of Sierra One Consulting, former retired FBI agent, also served in the military, served his country for 39 years. Tim Jansen, famed criminal defense attorney. Steve Cohen, he is a PR expert. He's got Next Horizon Media. That is his company. And Steve knows all things PR and booking amazing guests, as you can tell from this show. Rob D'Amico, is there any amount of ammunition that you can shoot at Hurricane Milton to stop it, or is Mother Nature just taking?
I think that was the Meteor movie where they shot something up at the Meteor. I don't think the hurricane's going to quite respond that way.
All right, that's good to know. So we're on to Diddy. We're talking Diddy today. Just to give you a quick weather report from Miami, the wind is starting to really kick up noticeably right now. It hasn't rained all day. My kid said to my wife, my 5-year-old said, he doesn't really fully understand that school was canceled because of the hurricane, but he said, what a beautiful day to not have school because it was nice here. I always like that you should have been in school. So any opportunity the school has to throw my kids back at me, they will. And they're off tomorrow, by the way. But the weather is getting bad. And on a serious note, whatever you do, pray, whatever it is that you do, it's going to be a nasty storm. The only good thing right now is it, I think, dropped down to a 3, and it's headed a little south of Tampa, which is a good thing. So Diddy is heading back to federal court tomorrow, and the list of troubles surrounding him just seems to grow exponentially. His legal team, which is new, he has got 2 new lawyers on top of the old one, a woman named Alexandra Shapiro and Anthony RICO. Shapiro actually served as a federal prosecutor in Manhattan, and Tim Jansen ain't too shabby. She was RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's one of her first clerks on the Supreme Court. So she's got a pretty good pedigree as a federal prosecutor. But the long story short, and now she's a defense attorney, their legal team, Diddy's legal team, filed a bail appeal on Tuesday morning. What does that mean in English? He's trying to get out of the MDC Correction Center. He's failed twice already, and this is now a 3rd go-around.
So when he has first appearance, he went before the magistrate. The magistrate found under 3142, the Bail Reform Act, that he was a danger to the community and a risk of flight. So he denied bail. Then they appealed to the circuit judge who was handling the case, Judge Carter. Judge Carter also agreed that he was a danger, and he kept him in based on tampering witnesses, the violence he did in the elevator, and the fact he could flee with the amount of money and access that he has. But they don't like that. So now they're going to do an appeal. Well, first they're going to appeal to the new judge. Carter's no longer the judge. And I think the new judge says, I'm not going to hear bail hearing. It's already been done. But they're appealing to the appellate court, which would be the Second Circuit in Manhattan. They have in the past overturned refusals to grant bond. Now, really in this case, what circumstances has changed? It looks like now they're just what they call forum shopping or judge shopping, trying to find any judge that will give favorable rulings. He is by far a danger to the community. He is by far a risk of flight. When someone offers $50 million as bond, $50 million in bond, he's clearly a risk of flight. He says he's worth over $1 billion. So 50 million is really not that much to a person worth $1 billion to flee to a country that doesn't have extradition.
Great. Yeah, that's a great point. Rob D'Amico, I know you're not a lawyer, but you are a former Fed, FBI agent. From your perspective, do you see a judge ever allowing Diddy out? And in a little bit, I'm going to ask Rob about the investigation, kind of what's going on behind the scenes. But just from your perspective as an investigator, as a former member of the agency, would you ever want to see him released knowing what the allegations are?
No, absolutely not. Like, and part of the civil suits on him talk about how he used planes to move drugs and people, and they did it, unknowingly, and the companies covered it up. So half the allegations are how he got around illegally and got other things around. So I always say there's no way, but there's always sometimes you get surprised and you're like, but I don't think a judge is going to look at it and the video, the violence, and his ability to move money and have money. I think the judge would worry about their career at that point, knowing that that's probably where he would go. The cases are getting crazy. He has that much money that they would be hit so hard if he, in fact, does flee or does something. And again, like we said, talked about the witness tampering. It's all over the cases. To get him outside so he could operate freer to do things, I think would be a travesty. So I don't think anyone's going to grant it. Like I said, Tim said, they're judge shopping, just trying to find one, throughout the chain that maybe, feels for him or somehow does something that none of us could foresee.
By the way, one thing people should know, Steve Cohen is also, among many things, a hip hop connoisseur. He knows a lot about the rap world. This is true. and he also spends part of the time in New York City. Steve Cohen, and we're going to get back to the federal bail situation in a moment, but Steve Cohen, any kind of pulse on the way New Yorkers, since this is a New Yorker here, are reacting to this, or the sort of the hip hop community in general?
I'm not sure, although I show up to blow up, I'm not sure how much I'm really of the hip hop community. I swim with the fishes, I fly with the birds. I get, I have a long career in media, and, and we've had our friend AB Butler, who knows him well. And
AB, who has been on the show, is a friend of Diddy's. And I don't want to say he was defending him, but he did say he's known him since childhood. Have you talked to him at all lately?
I've talked to him, and I think AB is, and this, I think, will speak to part of the reason why, people aren't necessarily speaking out. I guess I know we're going to get into that later, but I mean, I feel like with any of these things, the suspicion is that this is the first time he's bumped his head publicly, but he's been playing in the dark for a long time. And now we look back at some of his comments, and, we've had them on STS for a while, his interactions with Justin Bieber, his comments on talk shows when he went on Conan O'Brien, and all of these things. So I feel like those people, there's always been suspicions about him, even from, when you were talking about the Tupac investigation, and there are a lot of people who felt, that there was something wrong with what he was doing. But to this extent, I don't think most people knew. And, and to this extent, and just so when you see some of these things, obviously the video that came out about Kelsey Ventura, that opened up a lot of people's eyes to it. But I also think even right after he quickly settled that lawsuit, people were, I'm sure Tim and Rob would agree, you were kind of like, you don't agree to that settlement that quickly if you're so innocent, right? Tim, I guess I should defer to you, Tim, on that, right? Well, when that came out.
Well, his lawyers said they rebutted every argument the government made. I don't think you can rebut where he was kicking and dragging this person in an elevator, trying to escape him by saying they had a toxic relationship. That was domestic battery, aggravated battery. He should have been arrested for those crimes. He was not. And if I'm the federal prosecutor, which I sat in those chairs as a federal prosecutor, there are witnesses who will not come forward. There are potential witnesses that may show up if he's locked up. But if he gets out and he's on the street running with his people and moving chess pieces, they will not come forward. And that's more important than anything, is the intimidation he will have by perception that he can get to you because I can get out of jail.
That's an amazing point. And by the way, we're kind of doing a potpourri tonight. So we're covering the latest with Diddy being back in court tomorrow. And if we have power, we will likely cover that. It's federal court, so no cameras. So we'll do a wrap-up show on it tomorrow night. Then tonight, we're also going to ask Rob D'Amico in a little bit, why wasn't he arrested? There's some speculation out there that maybe Diddy was an FBI informant. That's Rob's world. We'll go to that in a little bit. And then Steve Cohen, Meave Moen, is here not just because of his good looks and intelligence, but because he is an expert in the world of PR and marketing, and all these celebrities have suddenly gone incredibly silent, and we'll dig into that a little bit. So you get 3 for 1 today on this Wednesday. Carvel used to say Wednesday is Sunday. You get a free Sunday on Wednesday. I miss that. From Olive Green to Rob D'Amico. Look at Olive's eyes. Amazing green eyes. I think they're green. They might be blue. I assume they're green because of her last name. But Rob D'Amico, do you think he, meaning Diddy, or his people, are still witness tampering from behind bars? Are they keeping key witnesses safe? That's an interesting question. I mean, I don't know why they're, I guess, safe meaning safe for them. But what do you think? Because there are allegations that there are A-list celebrities who are silencing victims. Not even really allegations. This attorney in Houston that's representing 120 new victims, he came out and said he's starting to settle cases with A-list celebrities. So what do you think's going on behind the scenes here, Rob?
So I do. I think his inner crew is probably trying to manipulate things. I think probably it started out strong in the beginning, and as more and more press got to this and things started happening, people started looking at it, it gets tougher and tougher. I'm looking at this like a mob case, like an Italian mafia case. It's a RICO case. He had a crew that protected him. He had a crew that did everything to him, for him. And that's what you're going to see. We'll talk about the investigation. But he has people on the outside that want to stay close. It's the money, the draw to them. And he's still paying them. He's still got all these things going on. And there's probably some type of communications happening that he is still trying to manipulate it. And if he's not careful, hopefully they'll get him on that too. But the more and more public scrutiny that gets in it is the harder it is to do. And hopefully if a witness gets contacted or whatever, they immediately go to law enforcement. I think, as in most of these cases, when you see the popular press and people start rising up, it gives protection to the other victims. One, they believe before they thought I can never go against this icon. He gets everything, done. And as Tim said, if he gets out on bail, that would totally harm that perception that witnesses are safe. And I think that's another thing that has to come into play, because you can say, hey, look, they couldn't even keep me in jail. They're not going to do anything when I do something to you or my people. So I think it's huge that he stays in jail. He's getting desperate. He's seeing his world come to a close, because when you start like looking at the RICO cases and then the exponential, that's how we keep mob bosses in prison for the rest of their lives. And that's what they're going for with this.
Yeah. Amazing. Steve, did you want to jump in?
Let's get a channel Carmela and raise my hand. I think it's a good opportunity for either Tim or Rob. Could you kind of explain what the RICO Act is? What did he do that falls under the Racketeering Act? I know he was sex trafficking.
Tim being a lawyer, take the first swing on this one.
So RICO was originally put on the books to kill the mafia, right? It's a criminal enterprise, and the enterprise is built up large. And so what they do, they try to get the tentacles on the outside and go up and get to the top people. Well, you couldn't get to the top people. They were insulated. And they had killers that would kill people if you talked. They would kill people if they thought you were going to talk. And they would kill people just to send a message, you better not talk. So RICO is a racketeering. You got to have a certain amount of, it's got to be an ongoing criminal enterprise. And the penalties are so harsh, and it allows so much evidence in. Almost any crime that is alleged to have occurred is now admissible, because it's part of the criminal enterprise. And when you build this indictment, you normally have maybe 70-page indictment, right? And by the time you read this indictment, that jury is like, oh my God, this person's the worst person in the world. That sticks to a defendant. It's hard to win a RICO. I have won a RICO in federal court. It's not easy. It's usually only used for serious defendants. A lot of time and resources go into it. And, you asked me what he's doing right now. Picture yourself in a little rowboat, right? And you got holes in the boat and they're bailing water. That's what they're doing. They're physically bailing water by trying to get new lawyers, new courts, and new judges to grant him a bond. He's desperate.
You could say that again. Desperate too. Go ahead, Rob.
RICO is all these little crimes that he did. Like he burned that one guy's car. That's a criminal act in support of the enterprise. And you don't have to. The key is the bosses don't, like in the mob, don't get their hands dirty. Everyone just pushes money up. They have meetings like the John Gotti when he was walking and the FBI bugged every few feet down the street he walked to get his conversations. He was controlling those acts through his directions. And that's what they're proving. They weren't proving that he did anything. They're proving that he gave the orders for this enterprise to, and they have to have overt criminal acts. And there's tons of them in this case. So he didn't have to drug the girl. He had someone do it. He didn't burn the car down. He had someone do it. So when you look at this and all the witnesses who are going to be fighting for their own sentencing in this, that's when you get the key ones to cop a plea. And the plea is that they testify that he himself gave the orders to do this, this, and this. And that's where they're, again, we'll talk about it in the investigation, and Tim can definitely talk about it, how you build a RICO case. It is these key witnesses, because none of it's recorded. It's not like we had ongoing recordings of this, but it is the net worth of all these people that will come to testify that he did it.
Yeah, that's a very important distinction, and thank you for the clarification.
Hey,
on
Rob,
RICO.
don't you think that in this case, they might have witnesses in witness protection program being hidden?
I do.
Yeah, so do I.
yeah.
And I think that's very good. When I was a federal prosecutor, I had a couple witnesses who were in witness protection, and the Marshal Service has one person who's in charge of bringing those witnesses. So I'm going to the grand jury, and I'm like, hey, man, I need to know when these guys are coming. He goes, he's coming between 12 and 5. You sit there and wait. And I waited from 12 to 5, and they came. They're very good about protecting their witnesses.
Are these people, Tim, that this is interesting. Now I'm off on a tangent. Are these people who have come forward, or that the feds have basically, I guess for lack of a better term, have like recruited and or subpoenaed as key witnesses who they now put into into this special category that they're in?
All right. So there's a couple ways you can do it. You can indict them and keep it sealed, right? And have them do cooperation. Or you can not indict them. You can keep them as government witnesses, and you don't have to give them till you give your witness list in the case that they're going to be witnesses. That's probably what they'll do, is protect these people as much as possible. Now, if they charge them with a crime, they're going to have to turn over the plea agreement to the defense. So they'll know early on who the witnesses are. But if they don't charge them, they don't got to give it over until they give discovery. So if they want to protect these witnesses, they're going to cut deals. And the people who are most implicated are probably going to want to cut deals and want protection.
Yeah. By the way, real quick, Tim, now I'm getting to Steve from Allison Thomas, who's coming to us from Australia, down under. She just wants to know, and I think it's because of the RICO, why is this in a federal court as opposed to a state court where we see, the most of the criminal defendants, at least that we cover?
Well, federal court has more ammunition. Federal court is different than state court. State courts is a rule in evidence is of excluding evidence, right? Federal courts is inclusion. More evidence can come in. They allow it because they believe the process will cleanse it and a fair trial. The U.S. Marshal, FBI, the investigating agencies are so much better. The resources are so much better. And you're less likely to have a corrupt federal official than possibly a state official whose family might be threatened.
And also with this one, it was all over the country, internationally. Right. He brought victims across state lines, and that's again where the federal thing is. And we can bring it all into one. We do have more resources, money, manpower, the labs and everything else that we can throw at it. They don't pay overtime, which believe it or not can come into play on cases like this. They're so big. But we can throw so much at it, and it deserves it. It really does. And it's not going to be televised. Like the things that you see in state court on TV, if you did in federal court, you would be like, that would be it. The judge would literally file you in contempt. All those antics and stuff they don't play games in federal court, and they don't televise it. So you're not going to have the same circus. Outside you will, but you're not going to have the same one from inside a courthouse.
And also, another important thing is the judges, federal judges are appointed by life. State judges sometimes have to be elected or appointed. You don't want to put that kind of pressure on a state judge, whose career might be looking and deciding, do I do this or do I not?
Yeah. By the way, Tim was a federal prosecutor for 5 years before becoming a criminal defense attorney. Kelly Wentworth in the chat says, with all due respect, the settling of cases and keeping the names private really pisses me off. I don't think they should get off that easy. I agree. The argument made by Tony Buzbee, this attorney, is it helps the victims. But Tim Jansen, quickly here, it also helps Tony Buzbee kind of fill his pockets a bit quickly and easily, does it not?
I can tell you, representing athletes and wealthy athletes, they settle cases rather quickly, silently with non-disclosure agreements. And when you got so much money and I mean, you give somebody $1 million and they're worth like 600 million. $1 million to that victim can change their life around, and they don't have to go to a trial. They don't have to be cross-examined. They take their money and they go. And it's a settlement of convenience for the athlete with the money. It's sad, but you're right. In a technical way, the victims do get some benefit.
Well, I think we're going to see kind of things float to the surface here. I think these A-listers could be outed. And by the way, Buzbee promised that he would out some. Nito Ceramics for Steve. Been waiting a while to get this question. Steve, I know you're not a psychologist, but you talk to Roger Rhodes occasionally. Do you think that, and my mom occasionally?
Yeah, your mom, definitely.
Yeah. Do you think that Diddy regrets not unaliving himself in the last few months? I mean, what do you think? That's a notorious, detention center, the MDC. What do you think's happening there?
No. And it's interesting. Like, a lot of these people that we previously have championed for like being winners, or for having a degree of resilience. Like P. Diddy changed his name like 5 or 6 times whenever there were issues. And, in the 90s, when he was an up and coming person, he had a concert at City College and all these people were trampled. He was with Heavy D and a bunch of other people, and that might have broken somebody else, and he kept moving. Obviously, in the early 2000s, he and Jennifer Lopez were involved in a shootout, and he kind of survived that one. It seems like he had 9 lives, and maybe he feels like this is, going to be a situation where he'll prevail again. I'm sure he's got people in his ear. He's got prominent attorneys. He's got 6 children. He's got people around him, and I'm sure he's convincing himself he has something to live for and to not do it. I'm sure he sees himself like a lot of the people we've dealt with, who he feels like, wow, I can get through this, and I have money, I have agency, I can get through it. But at some point, who knows? And thanks for the question. He may be overcome with despair and realize that he's not getting out of it, and may reach.
There's definitely invincibility in this, in a lot of these guys that have never been called to the carpet. Someday it may hit, but also, with his status, I'm not, he could be treated well in prison too. I mean, when you look at certain things, even though pedophiles and some other folks are treated harshly in there, like I think Epstein was kept, segregated, but he could be a hero in some of these prisons and get treated very well, and life's not too hard on him until a certain point. But I think invincibility is probably the biggest thing you see with these mega stars that start getting in trouble.
But I think it speaks also to the counsel he's getting, right? And Tim often says, like, he tells his clients what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, and he's got really a formidable legal team, and some of them are probably telling them, hey, with this situation we were able to do this, or what if you flip on these people that, for example, the Ariel Mitchell kid who's representing some people says that there are people in videotapes of more prominence than P. Diddy, so who knows? It seems unlikely, but maybe that he's thinking, as improbable as it might be, that he can get out of this situation, and I just wanted to interject something Tim said earlier, about working with athletes. Tony Buzbee, also the attorney in Houston, who says he's got over 1,000 people, some as young as 9. He handled Deshaun Watson, the football player on the Browns. I mean, he handled like those lawsuits, and a lot of them did pay it off. He now has got like a $280 million contract. He's underperforming. That's neither here nor there. But he settled like 40 of those, and for very much the same reason as what Tim, alluded to. It's not that much to him. I don't know. I think he's seemingly in a world of hurt. I don't know how he gets out of this. I mean, do you see that, guys? I don't need to commandeer the conversation.
I want a lawyer that's confident that they can win the case. Like, I mean, a good attorney is like a good quarterback or wide receiver. I think there's some arrogance in them too, and I want that. But also, there's a lot more money fighting the case than there is pleading it out. Like, if this guy came to me for security, I'm looking at like, oh wow, like there's a big mega ticket to do that. It's the same on the legal side. Not that I blame him, but I also want an arrogant lawyer. I want a guy that really is going to go in there and believe in himself and what he does. Like I said, I don't want a quarterback that thinks he's second best. I don't want a wide receiver that thinks he's second best. I want a guy that thinks that, and he's going to charge it. And P. Diddy, like, this is money for his life. There is no amount that's going to shy him away from trying to get out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm always curious how much of that money is liquid, because I know he was in debt with like $100 million mortgage on his LA mansions. But I know this will surprise some, but Steve Cohen's got a 3-year deal with STS for $251 million. So he's outperforming Deshaun Watson. Tim Jansen, does anyone know the approximate conviction rate of these crimes at trial? It's like 98%, isn't it, with the feds?
I'd say it's probably 98%. Less than that go to trial, but to win it actually in federal court, to win a RICO case in federal court is not easy, because unlike state courts, you got to take cases when someone's arrested and they're charged. The federal system has the ability, the U.S. attorney, the assistant U.S. attorney has a chance to take these cases to the grand jury, see what they have. They can prepare their case, and they know they got a good case, and then they get the indictment. It's a better case, and a stronger case in a stronger avenue. And I agree with Rob. You're going to have lawyers sometimes take cases. They don't care if they win or lose. They got a tuna on the hook. They're going to file whatever they want them to file, right? Big tuna, you pay, I'll play. And you can't get a bigger, excuse me, Diddy's calling me now. I might have to go.
Hey, can I be your like paralegal or
you're my investigator?
Yeah,
you're my investigator.
Yeah.
We'll go eat at Sparks Restaurant.
Yeah, because we're gonna start eating at some good steakhouses on that dime.
By the way, big shout out to Henchie Held, coming to us from war-torn Israel. She's in Jerusalem. Hope you're staying safe. And then, of course, the GOAT, my mom, Carm, is apparently in the chat. Somehow she got like mod access, and she's been, I guess, unsubscribing people unbeknownst to her. I don't even know if she's aware of it at this point, but I thought that was kind of funny. So if that happens and Carm did it to you, don't take it personally. She does not know that she's even doing it. There's a question here that's interesting, Tim Jansen, and Tim, I got a few more for you, but can Combs surviving baby moms take out any kind of protective order regarding their shared minor children and contact? Most are not minors anymore. As cases progress, I worry he could use them as leverage. That's a very interesting question, Tim.
So take out a protective order against the children. Well, he's not married, my understanding. He's just the father of these children, right?
As far as I know, his wife passed away, Kim Porter.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think he needs a protective order because he's in custody right now. You can't file anything because it's hard to argue that he's a danger from the husband when the husband's in jail. Is he desperate? Look at the motions he's filing. Does he know he's going to lose at trial? Absolutely, he knows he's going to lose. That's why he's doing everything to get out. And once he gets out, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months, then we're going to read something and he's gone, right? He's gone on a freighter with no passport to a country. So he's definitely a risk of flight.
Rob D'Amico, this is a scene out of a movie. Could Diddy fake a heart attack, be sent to an actual hospital, and then abscond because he has the money and means to pay someone off? Okay. STS Nation covers it all. What do you say to that, Rob D'Amico?
In the U.S., probably not. But I'll tell a quick story. So renditions, what used to be a rendition is when FBI would fly somewhere to arrest someone who had charges or convicted somewhere. It got a bad name during the terrorism stuff. But we used to arrest guys after 25 years. They'd find them in the Philippines for murder. Like, those were great because these guys think they got away. I had to do a rendition in Colombia. First FARC guy ever to get basically indicted on killing Americans. And his plan was he was in a jungle prison. He got a gun and he was going to shoot himself in the foot to go to a hospital so he could escape from the hospital. Well, he got the gun. He shot himself in the foot. He goes to this Colombian hospital. I guess the doctor didn't like FARC guys. The guy amputated his leg at the hip. Like, he shot himself in the foot and he cut his entire leg off. And we ended up getting him. I flew a FBI G5 down to Colombia. to pick him up and just laughing about like, hey, your plan didn't really work out. You lost an entire leg and you're still coming to the U.S. But there are things out there that you have to look out for. I mean, there was some white supremacists that did this in I forget what state out west. They ended up getting caught and shot and killed and stuff. But when people start getting desperate, they start doing different things. I don't think he can put something together to try to do that in New York, so to speak. But there was also the Magluta, the Falcone Magluta case, where they tried to land a helicopter in the prison yard in Miami. Typical cocaine cowboys type of thing. So there are things that are out there, and Tim talked about it. How would I get out? It'd be I want to go on a plane. That's what they're looking for: a boat to a bigger boat to a boat that just disappears. But then again, I still think we would find him personally, and I'd love to be on the team that arrested him wherever he landed, so to speak. Those are really fun cases because it's the people that think they got away with it. Part of that, chasing the pirate in some, across Africa and arresting him in Somalia. You think you got away with it, but nope, you didn't. We got you.
Wow, that story about amputating.
Who was that?
Is crazy.
Who was that executive who, that auto executive who went into like the cello case? I should look it up. I remember, I think he was in Japan or something. Like he was a Lebanese.
That's right.
And he was able to get out.
They put him in a box, right? And they got him out.
Yeah, I need to look it up. But,
I never heard of that in my life, Steve Cohen, but you let us know, and
read
I will
read a newspaper, Joel.
Yeah,
read a newspaper.
That's right. It was a car dealership.
No,
He was a mega guy.
Yeah.
They had him in house arrest in China, I believe, or somewhere.
Yeah.
And they got him out in a box, and before they knew it, he got out of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim Jansen, someone just asked, how many times can you attempt to get bail? Is it infinite? How long can this go on?
He got lucky because, first time you get the magistrate, first appearance judge, then you get the judge on your case, right? And that circuit judge denied it. Now they got a new circuit judge, and then they got one appeal to the second DCA. I believe that'll be it. Unless there's a change in circumstances, right? There's got to be a significant change that either the government's witnesses or something falls through, and maybe the evidence isn't as strong.
So here's a direct quote from the appeal that the lawyers put out there. Sean Combs requests that this court order his release on appropriate bail conditions and order his immediate release pending disposition of this appeal under federal rule of appellate procedure, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Combs should be released because regardless of the government's untested allegations, the proposed conditions will reasonably assure his appearance and the safety of the community. Tim, the problem I have in this sentence is will reasonably assure. They can't say are 100% going to assure, but they're basically saying, look, our client is harmless on the outside, but the allegations seem to take you in a different direction. So what are the chances tomorrow that this judge does in fact offer him some sort of bail?
Well, it's not going to be a single judge because that judge said he's not going to hear the appeal. It's probably going to be a 3-panel judge, or maybe it's just they give it to a DC an appellate judge who's going to review it. It all depends who appointed that judge, right? And what that judge's philosophy is. These judges aren't subject to the political whim since they're appointed by life, and the government hasn't responded yet. They get a chance to respond to these allegations, and when they said that they rebutted every presumption, it was laughable by saying the beating of that girl in the lobby was rebutted because they had a violent relationship. That's crazy. He allegedly put a Molotov cocktail in someone's car because he thought the guy looked at his girlfriend at the time. So he's having people do dirty work for him. Those are acts of violence. And what is he right now? He's worried about what? Witnesses against him. What has he shown a propensity to do? Violence against people against him. That is the very thing, danger to the community.
You see it there, Carm. She is the mother of all moderators. She said it herself. Aloha, Carm. Carm is in New Jersey, and that is where Karen is. Maybe Karen will bump into Carm. Carm will bump into Karen. You just never know. So, Tim, I didn't fully understand this. There is a new judge in this case because the last judge has some sort of conflict with a potential trial date. This new judge, his name is Judge Arun Subramanian. Subramanian is his last name. And Tim, according to the Mirror, the British paper, the judge issued some sort of he filed the clerk for this judge filed something basically, and I'm going to read what this is, and you can explain to me what it is after the fact. The clerk of court is respectfully directed to terminate the motions at dockets 9 and 13. These are Diddys, I think, which were resolved prior to the reassignment of this case to me. This is the judge's clerk putting this out there. Is this the judge basically saying, don't come to me with this third bail?
That's exactly right. This issue has already been resolved by the earlier judge, circuit judge, and the magistrate. The judges don't like to be forum shopped. They don't like to be used and put in the pressure that, oh, we'll get you to overturn it. They don't like to overturn other judges' rulings, especially ones that they're going to practice with, know very well. So he's basically saying this is not an issue. It's going to be the Second Circuit Court of Appeals that's going to decide whether he gets bond.
By the way, we're going to get back to Steve and Rob in a minute, but we're kind of legal heavy at the moment. We are doing a few different subjects in one here. The former judge, this last judge, was a guy named Andrew Carter. Again, he could not accommodate a potential future trial date for this. So again, we're going to see him in court. So if this judge, Tim, is essentially appears already to be denying this third bail hearing or the permissibility of it, what can we expect tomorrow? He's set to go to court. What are we going to see happen?
He's going to set discovery deadlines. He's going to set a trial date. And if there's any other issues that need to be resolved prior to trial. And these federal judges, the rules don't apply to them. They make the rules. It's their courtroom. I don't care how well you know them. Judge Carter has basically decided he's off the case for scheduling. Was hard to understand that because it's not really a trial date, but maybe he had another conflict. And Judge Carter was probably, my understanding from my sources, was the most lenient judge in that circuit. And if anybody was going to grant bond to P. Diddy, it would have been Carter.
Yeah. And it didn't happen. So I guess it's not happening tomorrow.
I remember a question came up. Someone asked what judge shopping was. And as Tim alluded to, it's as a prosecutor and defense attorney, you get to understand the judges and what their disposition is and all these other things. So sometimes if you're going to wait to file to certain magistrates on duty because they look at things one way and this judge looks at things another way. So that's kind of judge shopping where you're kind of waiting to do something like, oh, I can go to this one because I think they're a little bit more lenient, so to speak. But that's judge shopping.
Thank you for clarifying that. Maya Rodriguez was just thanking Rob D'Amico for being basically a freaking badass. You see it right there. A cops with principles. Love this guy so much. You make me proud to represent law enforcement. Since my mom is in the chat, it was drizzling this morning, so I didn't think I should go to the gym. I could get a little damp. But as you heard, Rob D'Amico, he braved the water. He went to the gym, and that's why he's a lot more fit than I am. I also read, by the way, that sugar is the absolute worst thing for you in the world today. So I've got to get off of sugar immediately. This is true. STS still has the best guess. So I'm going to come back to Rob on the investigation, but there was an interesting development getting us into some of the PR stuff. And that is Steve Cohen. This is your wheelhouse. Piers Morgan had on Jaguar Wright. And I've suggested to you, Steve Cohen, let's get Jaguar Wright on. Some people have said she's got a kind of a bit of a sketchy past. So we needed to kind of look into that, maybe vet her a little bit. But she basically went on Piers Morgan's show, which is now a YouTube show, and said that Diddy and JayZ are monsters in so many words. That is how she phrased it. But then his show, by the way, is called Uncensored. Piers Morgan came out and apologized to Jay-Z and Beyonce and offered a direct apology, saying that editing interviews is not something we do lightly at a show called Uncensored. But like the proverbial cries of fire in a crowded theater, there are legal limits on us too, and we apologize to Jay-Z and Beyonce. Now, Steve Cohen, I don't want to get you sued, but there's been rumblings for decades about Jay-Z, and now he's basically silencing Piers Morgan in essence. How do you see this? You're muted. You got to unmute yourself, Steve Cohen.
I feel like if I worked with Beyonce and Jay-Z, I would probably do the same thing. Why, if you can do it, and they're each probably worth $1 billion too, why allow somebody like that to just kind of say things about you and potentially defame you? And they obviously had enough heft behind them to tell Piers Morgan, check yourself before you wreck yourself. I saw that as well, and I think it's tough. Like, we face this when we have people on all the time. I mean, some people seem to have credibility issues that eluded us. It remains to be seen what this Jaguar Wright may or may not know, how credible she can be. I watched one show on Piers Morgan who I think does a great job, and he had DJ Vlad, and he says, listen, I'm not going to co-sign what she said. I don't think she has a lot of credibility. It's an axe to grind. She's been saying this for years. She in turn said, hey, I don't like DJ Vlad either, somebody who seems to know that culture pretty well. He's a cultural vulture, and he makes his bones off the Black community and casts aspersions on them. But I think, and we talked before the show about, how we can enlighten people about, the public and how people in the public are viewing this. And I guess it comes down to, what benefit do people have? People do things that serve their interest. So what benefit do any of these other celebrities have to come out and speak out against it? You've seen some people, 50 Cent has come out a lot. He hates them with the heat of 1,000 suns. They have, vitriol towards each other. Suge Knight is in jail. He also, has gone against him before, and people are now, and I think for Tim and Rob, I think it's very interesting that Alex Spiro is representing Tupac's family. He's a very prominent lawyer, works with Mayor Adams. He just handed Alec Baldwin, he's an exceptional attorney, and that's going to be a lot more heat on Puff Daddy or P. Diddy as well. But I guess, it's a pretty circumlocucious way of me answering this, but I feel like you have to be careful with what you say, and these people have enough heft behind them to say, hey, I'm not allowing this Jaguar Wright to get away with saying certain things. And, I think I from having covered a lot of stories and working on a lot of these things, I feel like PR people, one, in order to, the reason why you're settling for me chopped liver rather than a prominent PR person is because what motive, what do they like? If people are paying these PR people hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to keep them out of trouble, why are they going to come on Surviving the Survivor for free and jeopardize their clients, kind of livelihoods? And I think, but eventually it may come out. I mean, I think it always comes down to Aladdin. Remember, like Key Bene, who benefits from some of this news coming out, And
we're going to get right to the investigation in a second, but Tim Jansen, this is a great point from Violet. Why did Jay-Z and Beyonce send the cease and desist to Piers, but not Jaguar Wright? Right, has been talked about ever since they didn't go after the source. Why is that?
Well, because they probably don't think she's credible, doesn't have an audience, but Piers does, and they wanted to stop it at the core quickly. And knowing Piers and his legal lawyer team probably told him, yeah, we're going to do a retraction immediately, and we don't know, and we're going to do it properly, and we're going to get out of this fight immediately.
Now, and it also intimidates other people from using it too.
That's
so
right.
That's one of those things. Like, hey, you're telling the entire broadcasting network at once that you can go after them.
It's it's like if Joel were in jail, he'd beat up the toughest guy in the prison block first, you know, so that everybody wouldn't mess with him. That's what Joe will do.
Of
if he
course,
ever
of
has to.
course. Look at that, Tim Jansen. Look at this from Roxanne A. YouTubers are getting cease and desist letters on cases that they're covering. Doesn't this mean commentary and opinion are going to get banned? Tim, what if what I would, you'd be the first person I call, but what if I got a letter from JayZ's attorney that I'm discussing what happened with him and Beyonce? I mean, this is America. There's a First Amendment right here. That I don't care who you are. I should be able to talk about it. What I would hide behind your back, Tim, but what would we do?
Well, as long as you're not defaming him and putting up there stuff that's clearly false and holding it out to be true when you know it's not, I think you'd be protected. You do have a First Amendment right, but you better make sure it's truthful and it's not defamation or libelous, right? They are public figures, so it's a higher standard to go against a public figure than private Joey sitting in his house somewhere. So it's a high standard. But remember, they got lawyers who will send that letter for $5,000 on their behalf, and it'll scare most of the people. 90% of people will back off.
You ain't scaring me, Tim, Steve Cohen, and Rob D'Amico. I'm sending Rob D'Amico straight in.
I saw one of our commenters made a good point. You know, she might have a platform, Jaguar, right? But obviously, Piers Morgan has a lot more to lose than Jaguar, right? So he's more likely to comply. She may say, screw it. She may be a couple of beers short of a six-pack anyway and just say, I was going to keep talking and doing it. But and maybe what you're saying is true. Like, and that's fine too. I don't know.
I think this community in general is so used to, like, I alluded to this when I texted you about doing the show. I did bodyguard work between the Marine Corps and FBI, and I was out in Hollywood. And I ran into some other bodyguards that were looking for jobs, and they were guarding a very prominent, huge producer at the time. Like, I don't want to say his name because, again, like, I don't want, even though he's dead, I don't want lawsuits. He loved little Asian boys, was the whole rumor, and these stories of these bodyguards like that were coming out and talking about, oh, if I see one more Asian kid coming out of that house. And I was dumbfounded. I'm like, what do you mean? And they were talking about this, and you look at all these other celebrities that have these consistent, like, massage, actors, getting groped by this star that's really big, and it come out and then it goes away. There's so many people in Hollywood that are into these type of things that if you say one thing, you will never work in that town ever again. And it's just known that way. It is absolutely, I wish there was a real Ray Donovan out there to fix some of this stuff type of thing, but it happens. There are powerful people that you look at it and you want to say something, but what's the point? Because you're going to get crushed. You're going to get crushed by lawyers or other folks out there that your whole life's dream of ever working in this town are gone because you utter one thing.
But there have been, though. There, like, remember, like, the guy Anthony Pellicano, who was a proper. I mean, there have been inspirations for Ray Donovan, and people are fixers. Harvey Weinstein used the Mossad.
Harvey Weinstein's again, and the power of the press coming out to get these people to feel entitled and protected to come out is amazing. But so much of it goes on that people are above it, and money buys a lot. It buys silence. It buys intimidation. Unfortunately, it's the truth. But it's out there, and JayZ and all these other folks, like $1 billion can buy you a lot. Absolutely. And if I'm trying to do a show and I get this letter that says, hey, like, we're going to basically put you in court so much you can't afford it, I'm going to look at, like, well, is it worth it to me to just shut up and just go on about other things? Or am I going to die on this line? This is the hill I'm going to fight. And it takes a lot of moral courage to do that. And a lot of people don't have the resources. So when they see it, it's one of those things like, why didn't people come out sooner? That's exactly why.
Look, I've seen this play out, and Steve has too, but I mean, I'm not going to name names, even though I'm so tempted, but in the news media, huge figures that we've all heard of. And I witnessed it, from a little bit of a distance, but know people that were involved. And it's scary because this particular person I'm talking about is a complete jerk, for lack of a better word. And you know, he's platformed again, and he did horrible things to people, and I know some of those people, and he uses his power and his wealth to get away with it, and he continues to get away with it, and he continues to get platformed, and it's horrible, and it's because honestly, because they have the money. Now, I think it's the power and the money, but the money just it buys them attorneys for days.
And
Brooklyn
it works the other way too. Like, you know, like Rob was alluded to, the power of money to serve as a stick against somebody. You know, it's also a carrot. I mean, that's why they're paying off all these people, as we know. He who has the peso has the say so many times, and you know it's but you know,
classic Steve Cohenism right there. We'll have a few more Steve Cohenisms. By the way, Space Coast wanted you to do a freestyle rap at the end of this. The guy's name that you guys were trying to get to was Carlos Gosen. Is that his name? That's the guy.
cello case.
Yeah. I got to be honest. I feel like I've heard of every news story in the world. Never heard of this. Brooklyn Janet. If Jaguar is telling the truth about some of the celebrities, they're not going to sue her, because then they would have to testify and have a trial. They don't want to do that. Any truth to that, Tim, that she could then be called as a witness, could be deposed, yada, yada, yada.
Well, you know, you see this all the time. Someone comes out and makes allegations against somebody, and you're like, well, why don't they sue that person? Well, maybe because the allegation's true, right? Truth is always a defense to defamation and libel. And they would subject themselves to a deposition, which might uncover more damaging things. So they just write it off, hope it goes away, just have their PR person do a denial and move on, right?
By the way, there's something called an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Yep. And when I left Fox News on my own, that's a story for another day. But you don't leave without them making you sign your life away. And it's hard. I had a very difficult time with that, because there were things that I wanted to say. But it's kind of like my dad used to say, your money or your life. And I have a family to feed. And I just can't stand the leverage that some of these corporations have and some of these celebrities. And I think they've got to get called out. My mom's having a heart attack right now, just telling me to shut up, but it is what it is. So I've been meaning to get to this for the last whatever, but we've got three awesome talkers. Steve might talk a little more than the others, but this is all great. Rob D'Amico, the investigation. So we know about the 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lube that Costco denied they were purchased there. But what is going on behind?
I love Costco.
Yeah,
I hope they don't get dragged into this.
Yeah, they put out a statement. So Rob D'Amico, what is going on behind the scenes with an investigation of this size and scope?
Right now, like I said, they're gathering. Like, you want the RICO case, and you're trying to figure out which ones are the key to make that case. You know, who has the most credibility and testimony. Which dirty players that you don't want to go too far up the chain. I mean, the FBI, to get Gotti, we brought Sammy the Bull in, 19 murders. But that's the only way we could get him. That's like that's the epitome of, okay, the witness you really want to use last to get somebody is someone like Sammy the Bull. But they're looking at all those things right now to make that case. And there's so much information coming in. They're just getting overloaded to a point of how much is out there and who's out there, and trying to put all the, timelines together. And I think a lot of the civil cases are going back and forth, and Tim can talk about this. Some of the laws have certain time frames that they can do. But in a RICO case, you can actually put a lot of that in, even though you can't do it civilly. You can put it in as one of those criminal acts in support of the enterprise. So you might not be able to do it civilly, but you can bring it into the criminal court in a different way, and you don't have to prove it. It's odd. So they're just building it. It's so much information. Manpower's going into it. Hopefully, they have the leadership team of the case just like saying, okay, I need this, and this team's going to do this, and this team's going to do that. Again, Tim can get into that a lot. But it is a lot of information. And then to prove it, like when you start getting into the real serious ones, like the movement of drugs and stuff with the jets and people, getting all that, subpoena that from the private jet company and the manifest and everything else again start saying, well, is this true, or is this an allegation out there that we won't be able to prove to a jury?
Yeah. Rob, let me ask a question in just a different way. So Samantha Marlin, by the way, tell the COE no getting pizzas in the storm. Last heavy rain we got here, as you know, the COE drowned our beloved minivan. Probably not a great idea to go out in this weather. But so Rob, you're like an adrenaline junkie chasing pirates through Somalia and like Colombian drug lords who are chopping their legs off. If you're working this case, what are you doing? Like, what is your part on a case like this? Are you trying to get informants? Are you trying to, like, what is your role? A guy like with your background in the FBI.
At this point, the case, like you're not investigating a current active thing going on, so it's a lot different. Like when I was undercover against a mob, building the case and talking to the defense attorney. I mean the prosecutors, what they need. They need, like, hey, we need type of this. But what you have now is teams, though. Like the lead, the AUSA, assistant U.S. attorney, who's looking at the case, is assigning, like, I need this. I need your team to run down to find out about, say, we're going to talk about the private jet moving people and drugs and all this stuff. So this team's going to go do this. And then he's got another part of the investigation that he's going to have another team work on. So he's the lead. He's the quarterback in this. Everyone has a job. Some might be, sexier, the wide receivers, but the linemen have jobs. Like, okay, I need you to get all the pen register data on whatever cell phone. And he knows where his gaps are and what he has to fill. So he's really got to assign investigators to go out, and I need subpoenas on this, all this stuff. So you get with an agent and a paralegal, and you start drafting all that to support this part of the case. So everything he's looking at in his plan, he now has to put together. Teams do it. And then, like, the FBI, though, is what's great about it is if the lead is out in Las Vegas and the case is in New York writes a case up assigning a lead, and then the Los Angeles field office will fill that lead. Like, hey, we need this, this, and this. New York may fly out to interview folks based on this, but you have teams around the country now in the FBI that are probably supporting this, that are working this case. And the lead AUSA is the quarterback on this, saying, I need to do this. Because the case is, I don't want to say it's not happening anymore. Things are still going on, but it's all history based. It's not like an active undercover op that you're doing that you can dictate how it's going. You're now looking at all history.
Tim Jansen, what about this from Anja? Would they give Diddy a deal if he starts naming names? Maybe put out a bigger name than himself. I would hope not, but we never know. Jimmy McNutty's right about this. I upgraded to a Bronco. I love that car, by the way, and I don't usually love cars. But Tim, what about that? What if he starts dropping some big names with tangible advice?
Well, Diddy's not going to cooperate unless he knows he's not getting out. And then his lawyers will then try to cut a deal if he's not getting out, knowing that he's not going to win or he's not going to survive the jail. Then they might try to negotiate, what do you have? And they'll listen. They always listen to what you have, but that doesn't mean they're going to accept it. It would have to be something momentous for them, because all the resources they put into this case and the ill for this person and how serious this person needs to be prosecuted, it had to be something remarkable for them to really cut a deal with him.
And Rob, this question here is interesting. Mysterious deaths at Bad Boy Records. That, of course, is Diddy's label. But, some people, again, allegations or speculation that his wife, Kim Porter, died under suspicious circumstances, that other people have died around him. Are the feds going to go back and look at some of these deaths to see if there's some sort of link to whatever they find in those baby oil canisters? Huh?
I absolutely would. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to follow up on. If in fact you have deaths from that, you have to go back and go talk to investigating detectives and what was there in the autopsy, and you pull people up to talk about it. So definitely, now that you know the end result, that he may be involved, that, like, hey, how can we tie it to him? Who was involved? Who were it might have been like they never indicted somebody, but now that there's more interest in it, and you can, again, leverage certain things about cooperating, someone may lead to something. So you got some cold cases out there with it. That, like, a whole bunch of things are going to open up because of the end end product here is this. And like Tim talked about, like, who would be bigger than P. Diddy? Like you like, again, like, we're going after
JayZ.
Sammy the Bull, and the only one above him, John Gotti. Like we that's a, dealing with the devil in that one. Who would be bigger? Like, I guess he could name, somebody, but it would have to be so huge to allow him to plead anything in this case, because it's so bad. So I don't think they're going to find that. And he may be holding that one, that one ace in the hole or he thinks is an ace in the hole. You never know.
Yeah, and Rob, what about this from Miss Clever? Are the feds going to test every baby oil bottle? Because they say that maybe there was drugs concealed in there that they were kind of massaging into the victims. What about that? Do they have to test each and every bottle?
I don't think each and every bottle, but I mean, we have so much manpower to throw at it. 1,000 bottles of baby oil, Bureau could do in a day. Like, it's amazing what you can do with that. So, again, manpower to the Bureau is nothing. Like, it is one of those things, like, when we want it, look out. Like, what we can do is truly amazing. To 1,000 bottles of baby oil is not going to slow the Bureau down in anything.
By the way, Kim Porter, this is true, was never his actual wife. They were together as a couple. So Tim Jansen, this is a you and Steve Cohen question, but there's a woman named Natalie Moore. I hope I'm pronouncing it, Moar. And she was basically Diddy's right-hand woman. Everywhere he went, she went. And Diddy, in a dedication to her back in 2018, said, and I quote here, "We've been through so much together. She's involved in all aspects of my business, and her leadership, passion, and hard work continue to exemplify the level of excellence I demand from my team." The irony is she probably wrote that for herself. But Tim Jansen, how important is this person? She knows everything. She's got the keys to the castle. Are the feds leaning on her right now? Could she be one of these witnesses that's got to go into witness protection?
I guarantee you they would, because she'd be really hard to cross-examine with the statement like that. She was on the inner circle, and it's not unusual to have a female on these sex trafficking cases, because there's a female to trust and let these people feel comfortable. Oh, there's not a bunch of dudes that are trying to do this. We got this lovely woman. She's going to protect me, even though she was close to P. Diddy. Of course, anybody close to P. Diddy that was that close, they want to get to. And P. Diddy knows that too. And P. Diddy's people knows that too. So I doubt she's around anywhere that she can be gotten to.
Steve Cohen,
a person left, I want to say in 2019 or 2020, and there have been other women that they've brought up, who work closely with P. Diddy, and I think a lot.
Did you say Natalie? Did you say Natalie Moore left in 2019? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there was a woman, I believe her name is Green or something, who is close to him and handles, it has been lauded as like his right hand or fixer. And I guess when you have, this is, I guess, the reason for the RICO statute, when you have a criminal enterprise or something with this many tentacles, there are going to be a lot of people involved and a lot of enablers. Obviously, there are parallels to Epstein, where he had people like Ghislaine Maxwell, finding some, like in this particular case, who's procuring these women, who's sending them over, who's getting some of these victims, who's enabling him to continue doing it. Joel had passed along an article by Tressie Cottom of the New York Times, and she wrote a profile, I believe, for the New York Times Magazine, and she just talked about how elusive he was to get to, and how scripted he seemed, and how kind of just inauthentic, and how she knew it at the time and was writing about it now. And so all of these people, they're managed very heavily when there's this much money involved, right? I mean, this was any scandal, you go back to Watergate, anything, it's always followed the money and seeing what's around there. When there's so much at stake there, I remember I covered the Tiger Woods story, and it was like 27 straight days in 2006 or 7, whatever year that was, in front of the New York Post, and they, you mentioned Piers Morgan. I'm not saying they would do it with him, but they would say, okay, if you don't do this story, we'll give you this one instead, right? So with the National Enquirer, they said, we're not going to, it was kind of Catch and Kill, which was the name of Ronan Farrow's book, one of the really pioneering journalists against Harvey Weinstein, where if you don't write about this, we'll give you another story. So like they're swapping it. I know Rob would know this. What was it in Spanish in Narcos where they was, what did he say? Like Pablo Escobar, he was saying either plato, either just, money or lead or something, and so like they have different ways to appeal to people, but I don't know what would motivate somebody to respond, right? Like if they know enough, to speak out against it. If they know enough about this, then I don't know what the upside is for them. Could you guys think of an upside for somebody else to speak out? I guess money, right? I guess they can sell their story.
Hey, Joel, I gotta put my courtroom chef hat on. I've got a bunch of people that fled Tampa area, and I gotta make dinner. I'm making them some black and grouper tonight.
Nice.
Haven't they suffered enough?
If
I didn't have to drive through a hurricane, I'd be up for dinner.
Yeah. Tim Jansen put pictures out. His Instagram handles courtroom
chef.
So
good. You'll drive
go a few more minutes. If you have questions for the FBI agent or Steve Cohen, put them in triple Qs and we will take them. Go ahead, Rob.
We got a couple ones. We didn't go back that you kind of alluded to the whole him being an informant thing. So I want to cover that. So one, Suge Knight is the one that threw that out there.
Right.
Suge Knight's in jail. He's a murderer. He's a thug. He has a big beef with P. Diddy. So,
by the way, sorry to interrupt, Rob. He also has a podcast called Collect Call with Suge Knight, which just blows my mind. This guy's a podcast.
He does it from prison.
Yeah, he does it from prison.
Jeez.
That's where
he does it with Dave Mays, who started the Source magazine.
I've never. Only in America could you have a podcast from prison and you're in there for murder. But go ahead, Rob. I didn't mean to interrupt. And I can guarantee his numbers are better than ours. But go ahead, Rob.
I just that floored me.
Collect Call.
So
Suge Knight.
One thing, now I'm not going to say never, because you go back to the big. I think a huge black guy is the case with Whitey Bulger in Boston, where the Bureau was covering for him. He was reporting on the Italian mob, but he was the leader of the Irish mob, doing killings and everything else. And you had a dirty FBI agent who is in jail covering for him. So I don't want to say it never happened, but there's so many layers into how you open an informant now and how you run an informant, and you have to get certain permissions from the U.S. attorney for your informant to do criminal acts. So if you have an informant that's running with drug guys and he has to be in on some of the deals for you to get money, you can authorize him to do certain things. But I also look at what can an informant give you that is worth opening someone up. So was P. Diddy giving up other drug stuff in Hollywood? Was he giving up sex trafficking things? What was his use as an informant that he's not the ringleader of? You can't open up, it's like me opening up an informant that's actually the mob boss. Well, he's the one directing everything. So why would I use him as an informant? He can give you everything, but he's the guy that you're after. So it's all these things that go in there. It is a great conspiracy thing to throw out there, because nowadays, both Congress and everyone else just throws this crap out there about conspiracies. Is working for the FBI, so they hush things up. FBI sure can't tell a prosecutor not to open up a case, especially low-level agents that are running sources can't go to the U.S. Attorney's office and say, "Hey, knock it off with this guy." That does not happen anymore. People in the Bureau, there's accountability, and you're not going to risk your career. Again, it has happened, but you're not going to risk your career to try to keep a guy like P. Diddy out of the thing if you knew that he was part of these things that were happening. So I don't see it. Like you said, it's great conspiracy. You go back to the JFK thing, and like conspiracies are so hard to unprove because you just say, oh, it's part of the conspiracy type of thing. I don't see what he could have supplied the Bureau that we would take the chance to run someone if we knew what he was doing. Because it was well known. And again, that's the silence that's out there, that he was up to these certain things. Why an agent would risk, hey, I want to open this guy up for this little bit of information that he's going to give me, and my exposure is he's the ringleader of most of this stuff.
Still trying to process myself that Suge's got a podcast.
Yeah, that literally blew me away. I'm like, are you like, he's doing it from a collect phone?
Yeah,
from prison. Like stop. Like, come on, let's figure things out.
Barry Glam says suddenly prison isn't sounding so bad to me. STP is surviving the prison.
Suge has got as good a life you can have in prison. He's got it. Like, you go. What was the movie with the mob guys, like, slicing the garlic real thin, cooking the steaks in prison? Whatever had that, like, Suge got that, obviously.
Suge's got that. So Steve Cohen, Janice Combs, it is Diddy's mother. Of course, he has a mother. We all do. And she's very upset. Her name is Janice, as I just said. She's calling this a public lynching of her son, which obviously has racial undertones. It is heartbreaking to see my son judged not for the truth, but for a narrative created out of lies, to bear witness to what seems like a public lynching of my son before he's had the opportunity to prove his innocence is a pain too unbearable to put into words. Do you feel for Janice Combs? I mean, she's got to stick up for her son. She's doing it, but she's between a rock and a hard place here, is she not, Steve?
I thought, and that was a statement released by her lawyer, Natalie Figures, and I thought it was a well-written statement. She basically was saying he's not perfect. We saw what he did with, just because he did these certain things which are incontrovertible, like, doesn't mean he isn't allowed the presumption of innocence. And I mean, I feel for her. He provided her a wonderful life all those years, and they've had their own ups and downs like anybody else. I imagine she's putting it out there, and you could just add it to just the data points out there about him, like with different people saying things. Maybe that says something. When you see these, like when we cover the Adelson trial, we're like, where was Harvey and Donna at Charlie's trial? So I think these mean something. I haven't heard statements from other members of his family, and eventually they probably should mitigate against some of the public perception of him, but.
And the statement goes on, by the way. I'm just going to read this other paragraph because it's where it gets a little interesting. And Rob D'Amico, I'll have you respond to this one. My son may not have been entirely truthful about certain things, such as denying he has ever gotten violent with an ex-girlfriend when the hotel surveillance showed otherwise. Sometimes the truth and a lie become so closely intertwined that it becomes terrifying to admit one part of the story, especially when that truth is outside the norm or is too complicated to be believed. Obviously, an attorney wrote this for her. I don't think there's any way she actually put this down. It just sounds like it's coming from a legal angle. But Rob, I mean, this video is undeniable. I mean, we've all seen it. We're choosing not to show it here because it is very triggering. But he really beats on Cassie Ventura, MD here, by the way, says, I believe Jaguar. It's part of me that does too. But I mean, Rob, do you think it was, people are also kind of wondering, like, what triggered the FBI to move all of a sudden? Was it this leak of that hotel video that made them move so quickly?
I don't know exactly. It could, I think there was probably things going on, and then there was a trigger at a certain point to come out on certain things. But I think all the other suits that are out there and stuff like that, it like one video, even though it's a horrible, I watched the video, it's horrible, it's unbelievable, the things you want to do to someone who does that. but I don't think that one thing was the trigger. I think there was probably a series of things that came out that caused this, but I think they're probably working on it for a little bit. You when you go to charge and indict and all these other things, like, you want it to be on your time frame. You want it to be, you have a chance to do things, because you don't want, it's going to be huge lawyers involved. You can't have a slip up. The U.S. Attorney's Office is like, they know, like, there's a 98% conviction rate because they only go to trial with the ones that are really, that they have built well. So they wanted to do this right. It may have pushed them a little bit earlier than they wanted because of the outrage and stuff. But it was something that was leading up to it that said, this is where we're at. And all of a sudden this happens. We need to speed things along, so to speak. But that happens in a lot of these big RICO cases where they're building it. They take years to build, literally. The mob ones, years to get it and to put everything in place. And then you do the indictments and you come out. So it might have been sped up a little bit, but I don't think it was the trigger.
And Martha Cardiel here, the authorities leaked the footage. Allegedly, people have been saying that. For all in Florida, thank you. This hurricane's starting to really, I guess, kick up. I'm in a windowless studio. We're going to wrap in a sec. But just one last thing I just want to mention. My heart really goes out to all the victims in this, and I think we have just skimmed the surface. But two of them are said to be well known. One potentially could be Usher. He put out he spoke to Howard Stern, I should say, back in 2016. And when talking to Howard Stern, by the way, he was put under Diddy's wing when he was just 14 years old. But in speaking to Howard Stern, he said there was always girls around. You'd open a door and see somebody doing it, or several people in a room having an orgy. It was pretty wild. Steve Cohen, these are also him, Justin Bieber. The names are out there. It's not a shock, I don't think, to anybody. They could very well be victims of this. Two huge names. How does it impact them? I mean, personally, but everyone looks at these guys as, sort of like, public figures, almost with an idol's eye. They look up to him so much. So how does it affect them personally? How does it affect the brand?
I think people would be sympathetic to them both. It's kind of like you're 13, you're 14 years old, like Usher was, and you're taken into the custody of somebody else, and you watch those videos. I'm sure. I mean, you're watching it in a different light, watching about how this is a 40-year-old man with a 15-year-old next to him, and you're saying to yourself, well, why would he want to react? Why would he want to act with somebody like that? So I think most of the, kind of vitriol and bile against that will go against, the abusers over there. And what others will say, it's what Suge Knight said, it's a culture that was permeated by Clive Davis or for years, and same, where young people are, were taken advantage by older ones.
Absolutely. Like, you look at the rap culture, but I grew up in the hard rock stages, and I worked security concerts in college, and I worked Motley Crue, and I worked their hotel parties, and that movie Dirty, absolutely true. It was off the wall. I was the 19-year-old.
Motley Crue, right? I mean, about their exploits. They wrote a book about their exploits.
Yeah. Well, the movie Dirty, talks about, we tried to secure a hotel. It's a whole top floor of a hotel, and it was nothing but it was sex and drugs. I was 19. I was a enlisted Marine in the reserves, going to college. I still called Motley Crue sir just because of my thing, but I didn't see women that I thought were getting raped, because that I want to allow, but there was a lot of drugs and sex, and it was just, that was rock and roll. Like, I've worked a lot of concerts and, met Heather Locklear, Tawny Katane. Like, it was just wild stuff at that time. And it was like, so when you look at the rap community and things, and then you take a young performer that gets brought into it, again, like, hey, this is the norm. If you want to be one of us, this is what it's about. And it's one of those things that goes down and it causes a lot of issues. but part of it is cultural. And I think this, trust me, this went way over that. But in fact, there's a line that goes between the two. And like I would get called, like we had whole signals for like Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue to signal out to security the girls that they wanted to invite backstage. And I had a thing like if she looked 15 or 16, I didn't do it. Like I'm not putting it to because half of them went to the roadies, only a few went to the band, and it was just like I didn't invite like 16-year-old girls to the thing. I just never went there. But there was plenty of other, grown adults that were just like, that's what they're about. And there's tons of books out there by them, but it is the culture. And it's, there's a fine line between the two.
Yeah, and it's crazy because the celebrity culture people, look, there's there's an entire network, Entertainment, that was built around celebrity culture. TMZ, very similar. Ida Shaw thanking Rob.
Yeah.
Steve Cohen, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. She's thanking you for the guests you've been booking, thanking me.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. But for those who do not know, Steve Cohen is the brains behind the operation. He is booking all the amazing guests. The COE runs the show in real life and here, and Space Coast on the West Coast. And we have the best mods in the business. So essentially, the four of us and the mods, we do the work of 17 CNNs, Fox News, MSNBCs each and every day. And it ain't always easy, but we're enjoying the ride right now. Steve Cohen, your final thoughts, and then we'll say goodbye to you and Rob.
I was going to say, I always appreciate the quote, like, if you want something done, ask a busy person, right? Like, so I think that, we work hard and we like each other. I mean, you and I have a love-hate relationship. You love me, I hate you. But I think that, but no, I was just going to say, like, to Rob's point about, like, okay, there's one thing about having groupies, but I mean, obviously a lot of these artists are victimized. Again, it's hard to look at a 40-year-old P. Diddy telling a 15-year-old saying, what we're doing is we're going to go buck wild, or we're going to do that. Like, I don't know. In my wildest dreams at that age, I couldn't see, thinking about what that kid would dream of doing and being the one to kind of convey that to that person and provide it. You're a sick, twisted person. I'm not even, maybe I'm no fun, but I wouldn't even I don't know if I'd buy a beer for somebody at that age, or do those kind of things. So it will come out, though, I imagine, I think it will come out and it's not going to look good for him.
Yeah, it will rise to the surface. Rob D'Amico is the founder of Sierra One Consulting. He's a badass retired FBI agent. Guy goes to the gym probably every day of the week, at least 6 days, I would say. And part of the United States military, no better military in the world. Rob D'Amico, a final question for you. If you were the agent who had to go back and interview Diddy, how would you start that interview and your final thoughts?
I would have like my profilers and stuff, like really figure him out. I know the guy who interviewed Saddam. I've interviewed top Al Qaeda and ISIS folks, and each one of them you take differently, so to speak. The pirate we took differently. You get it. I don't go in with a solid game plan because I want to see how he reacts to me, so to speak. It's one of those things that a good interviewer, interrogator really gets a feel for it, and then you start using what you're given based on how he's doing it. So, but I would definitely have my profilers do an assessment, really figure out what his motivations are and what his mental needs are. Because I know people that have gone in and interviewed serial killers and serial rapists, and the guy interviewing them is like, hey, look, I get it. Like, she was wearing that short skirt. Now they're talking about a 13-year-old girl. It is making the agent physically sick to say it, but if it gets him to get that person to admit it, then that's what you have to do. It's one of those things, like, what is that gets you that common connection? And I've made connections with terrorists on the battlefield and all kinds of things that you get it just for that point of getting him to say what you need to say. So it's one of those things that go in there, but I'd have a whole assessment on him before I went and talked to him.
That's really fascinating. I'm glad I asked that question. Again, Rob, retired FBI agent. We're going to stay on this. We'll bring Rob back. We're going to bring Steve Cohen. Steve Cohen, how did you like your official debut? You were with me at Donna's trial, but today is the official debut. How did it go, Steve Cohen?
Yeah, I thought it went really well. It went swimmingly, and you did a superb job. Really superb.
Steve, you did a better job, and I appreciate you, man. You always do a better job. Your IQ is at least 93 points higher than mine.
We're gonna work on a camera and a background for him.
Yes, thank you. Please do. Please do. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
I love it.
I got a new mic coming in and everything. I need it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You don't have to be a Rockefeller to help a fellow.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So on a serious note, again, it is Dan Markel's birthday. If you want to take a moment to remember him. And there's a massive hurricane moving across land just above where I'm sitting. There's a chance we're going to lose power and not have a show tomorrow. Otherwise, Steve Cohen is already working on a show about Diddy in court tomorrow. Maybe D'Amico will come back on that one. Maybe Tim Jansen will come back. And I'm still planning to go to the Sarah Boone trial. For those who do not know, she zipped her boyfriend into a suitcase and he suffocated, kicking and basically screaming, not allowed out. It was a sick video to watch. And on Friday, I'm going to have Phil and Scott watch Sarah Boone's police interviews. Last time we did Jen Soto and Stefan Stearns of Maddie Soto. Infamy. They were doing that, and I was set to do it again with Jen Soto and Stefan Stearns, but I'm going to pivot and we'll watch Sarah Boone's interviews because that trial is coming up, and we'll eventually get back to Jen Soto and Stefan Stearns. But appreciate everybody being here. Had a lot of fun with these guys, despite the serious topics. Thanks for hanging with us, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. That's coming from Space Coast. On the West Coast, there's like an earthquake every day, hurricane wars. #end times, but we're all together. Everyone be safe. Love you, America. Love you, Florida, because these two guys are in Florida. Be safe, Florida. Be safe, everyone in Florida. And we'll see you back here tomorrow night. Steve and Rob, stick around 1 second. Carmela says, don't go outside.